for the fun of it. Tammy, let me move you, promote you to panelist. Oh, there you go. Okay, it took a while. Sorry, Tammy. And we're going to pause for a couple of minutes just to see, well, a minute or two,
Okay.
to see who else joins us. Pardon me. We shall see. I did hit record. Yes, we are recording. It's been about 1 minute. Let me check the email just in case. Oh, Janice, I'm trying to log in tonight, but Janice, you're already on.
Okay. Scott
Uh,
Mitchell was gonna go on. Oh.
That because we're together.
Yeah, I think it's because we're too close.
Oh, Janice and Tammy, are you in the same room?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would do it. Yeah.
Yeah, one of you keep your microphone off.
All right. How do I do that? Okay, I'm on mute.
Tammy's muted, so that's fine.
Okay,
All right, so there, right.
all right.
And I haven't seen anything from Scott. Hang on. Here, check the email again.
He also works for the city of Brockton.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he's on the DPW.
Oh, okay.
So he was very interested in his.
He might be the email that Pam sent just a minute this afternoon. Whoops, restarted.
But, sent an email that Pam sent.
Okay. He might not know how to get on.
Hi, Scott. No, that's a different Scott. Pam sent out some instructions. I wanted to see if it's to him. It was actually to a gentleman named Henry Restrepo.
I wonder if that's been.
Could be an alias.
Is he from the church?
Hang on just 1 second.
Oh, no, that's a different person. I was just looking to check.
I'm gonna open that.
To my.
That's Pam had sent him that. Copy invitation. Let's go back over here.
He's got the email of S. Mitchell, and it's the same as on the letter.
Yeah, Scott works for the town. So it's S. Mitchell, Brockton Public.
No, it's
S-
CON.
S. Mitchell.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, in the wrong spot. There he is. So I just emailed that to him, but it's his city email address. That's the only one I had.
Right, that's what he.
And there was another gentleman named Henry who we sent in a link to this morning, but I don't see him on.
let's make that down.
Do either of you ladies have a different email or a text number for him?
Scott,
Yeah,
Uh,
well, we're recording this, so,
Right, you can, yeah.
and it's not going to be too different from the other recordings, but let's start with a I'm sorry. I didn't remember where I was for a minute. I'm Rob May. I'm Director of Planning and Economic Development for the City of Brockton. We've been working on a land use plan for the area around Good Samaritan Hospital, which we call the Lovett Brook area. We had a employee who we sent out to make sure that they had contact with all the neighbors. And it came to our attention not too long ago that she did not do a very good job. And a matter of fact, there were a couple of people that did not get contacted. She was sending letters and she was also passing out flyers in the neighborhood because we had a poll that we wanted people to take. My apologies that all I can say is that she does not work for the city anymore for other reasons. But again, I am very sorry that you're coming to this late. Oh, hang on. Here's Scott. And I'm going to promote Scott to a panelist so that Scott will be able to join the conversation. But joining us tonight is Emily Ennis. She is our consultant. She has been working with us for the past 6 months on this plan. And I guess I'm going to hand it over to her to walk through the presentation. And I should say that there's been a lot of market research and a lot of ideas that have gone into this. And this is kind of based on what the real estate market will bear. This is something that could happen in this location because of its proximity to the hospital, because of its access to Route 24, that there's potential for redevelopment sometime between now and the next 20 years. So I don't want people to think that, oh my God, this is going to happen tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of other things that have to happen for this to work. But we think that this plan could play out if the city chooses to pursue it and to put the resources in place to make it happen. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Emily Ennis, and it's Ennis and Associates, and she's going to walk us through some information here.
Thank you, Rob. So first of all, Janice, Tammy, Scott, good evening. I'm delighted to be talking with you tonight. I just want to echo Rob's apology and concern. We had no idea that we hadn't reached out or hadn't actually made contact with some of the people that we thought we had. So I'm glad to have you here tonight. I am going to walk through, but there's only 5 of us on the call, so I'm happy to keep this a little bit more casual in terms of questions. And then also we'll talk about the next steps. This is not the only opportunity for people in the area to have input into what we're doing and what we're thinking about. So I'm glad to have you here tonight. And I am going to share my screen. So make sure I'm showing the right thing here. And then I'm going to just squeeze this back out so I can look at you guys. So you can see the area here. We're going to show it again in more detail as we move forward. I'm going to quickly run you through what we were looking at in terms of existing conditions, both market and physical, and talk to you about the recommendations that we have for this plan. I'll talk a little bit about the public engagement that we've done to date. Then I'm going to take you through the scenario development. Rob mentioned that we had looked at what the market could bear, and also at some of the physical improvements that could happen in addition to market improvements. And we did what's known as scenario planning to try and figure out what it could look like. And so I'll talk a little bit about that and kind of the limitations on what we did. Then this is the first step of a 2-part process. This part was creating that master plan, that land use plan for the whole area. And then the second step is to look at creating an urban renewal plan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what that is, because it's a little bit different from what it used to be in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and also how this might qualify. And then we'll talk about next steps. So with that, just the existing conditions. So this really started out of a project that MIT students had done as part of their class a few years ago to look at life sciences in gateway cities. And they chose Worcester and Brockton as their 2 sample cities. And they did, actually, I think it's several semesters work on this, maybe 2 or 3 semesters work going into depth. And as the city of Brockton looked at the results, they said, well, actually life sciences here makes a lot of sense. It's certainly something that's been in the news a lot recently in the Boston and Cambridge area. How can we, with hospitals, with other healthcare industries, with a site that's so close to the highway and seeing, life sciences come down Route 24, how can we bring those jobs to Brockton? Train people who live in Brockton now to work at those jobs. I think the fact that the Brockton High School has such a strong STEM program and specifically looking at life sciences, I think one of the people we talked to at the state said it was the second best program in the entire state for these. So there is a thinking around the genesis of this report, the beginnings of this report, of how could Brockton take the information and build on it. And so the first thing that our team did was split up and look at the market demand, which was led by RKG Associates, and then Ty and Bond and I looked at the physical conditions. Ty and Bond was also looking at the existing traffic conditions in the area, and as well as the environmental conditions. So from the perspective of the market demand, we sort of started with the idea of the life sciences. Noting Brockton's strengths in the healthcare industry, noting that Brockton has the ability to become a regional leader within life sciences because it's just starting to trickle down. Brockton is really the center of a large region that is connected by Routes 24 and Route 27. It has the educational institutions, not just the high school, obviously, but Massasoit as well. And these are good jobs, and good jobs for residents is important. So RKG did some projections, not just on life sciences and particularly on manufacturing. So we're not talking about the research and development that needs to be right next to the universities in Boston and Cambridge, but more of the secondary stage. So we have a product, it needs to be manufactured, and then it needs to be distributed. So RKG looked at that. They also looked at office uses, residential uses, retail uses, and based on past trends came up with a demand projection. But this is important that their demand projection, which you see here, is demand for the entire city. So that's unlikely that all of that would happen on the site. And when you see the scenario planning that we did later on, it's important to understand that RKG's projections based on past trends show a lower growth than we're showing on the scenario development. And I'll explain why when we get there. The other thing that we did was we looked, as I mentioned, at the physical conditions. So we looked at impervious surfaces, all the paving in the area. We looked at the fact that it's surrounded by environmental justice communities and what that meant in terms of income, in terms of people who have not necessarily had access to the benefits of the types of jobs that we're talking about. Also traffic, transportation, the demographics in general. And there were other conditions that we looked at. This is just a summary. At the same time that we were doing this, we had an online poll, 3 actually separate online polls running at the same time, one for employees of the area, one for residents of the area, and one for business owners of the area. And the flyering that Rob mentioned earlier, the distribution of flyers, was designed to get people to respond to those polls. So as we're doing this, we're looking at the existing land uses as part of that. So you see they're actually kind of grouped into different uses. We have a few single families still in the area. And when I get to the end of the presentation, I'll talk a little bit of the history of the area. We have a bunch of restaurant and retail, and you see the footprint of the former movie theater there. That's very important to our discussion. Obviously, Good Sam Medical Center and the medical offices around it, and of course, Harbor One Bank, and then the church up here in the corner with its rectory there. We also note Lovett Brook coming through the site. It actually starts up here. It goes underneath the 7-Eleven and the laundromat. The building's actually built on top of the brook. It comes through here. It's channelized in this area, so it can't overflow its banks, but there are wetlands, obviously. And then it comes out underneath the highway entrance and exit and continues on there. And so the idea of opening up Lovett Brook and doing something nice with it, thinking about the environmental considerations was really important. Thinking about, there's a lot of multifamily up here. There's retail over here. Obviously, Westgate Mall is over here to the right. There's a lot of single family down here to the lower left and beyond off the screen. So thinking about, is there a way that you could open up Lovett Brook and make it something that people have walking paths on, something that's a neighborhood amenity. It's not just sort of tucked away on the site. Interestingly, one of the responses we got from the survey was a man who said he used to fish at Lovett Brook, which I thought was fascinating. So when you see this in 3D, you're going to see some other 3D images later in the scenario planning. So this is what it looks like today. This taller building over here is the Good Sam Medical Center. This building here, sort of in the midground, is the Harbor One. You see this white line going across, that's Route 24. Coming up Oak Street and onto Oak Street Extension here. You can see the medical building, you can see some of the single family homes, churches right here in the corner, and then you see the multifamilies on the other side. Up here in sort of the top right corner, you've got the retail and restaurant turning the corner to North Pearl Street. So just to orient you there. And then these are some of the images of the area taken from different spots. Just showing some of the conditions. You can see the paving, you can see that there's the sort of the trees. This actually here, interestingly enough, that's a paper street. It's a street that's on the city's GIS, historically shown on maps as a street, but it was never actually built out. This is right near Harbor One. And you can see a little bit of the channelization of the brook there. So I'm going to start with the recommendations, and these got pulled together from a number of sources. Obviously, ourselves as consultants, the 3 members of the consultant, or the 3 firms of the consultant team, what we heard from the surveys. We did have an online public meeting and got some more feedback from that. And then pulling together sort of best practices research, the surveys, what we heard. We had a couple of focus groups in terms of talking with a few of the specific landowners. And then we also had a project advisory committee of people from different state agencies that had either links to life sciences or links to workforce development, and had some discussions with this. So all of the recommendations you heard kind of flowed out of these conversations. So the first bit is continuing to reach out to critical partners in terms of the life sciences. So thinking about how do we bring employers here? How do we identify training and workforce opportunities for the Brockton workforce, and not just people who are here now, but students who are coming through the high school and the colleges, and really sort of targeting their skill set to life sciences manufacturing. Then thinking about new development, who are the critical partners in terms of marketing the area, who are the critical property owners in the area, continuing discussions with brokers, letting them know that Brockton's here, there's some land available, creating that urban renewal plan. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it really gives the Brockton Redevelopment Authority the ability to do some of the public infrastructure improvements that I'll show you in a minute. Changing the zoning to allow the types of uses that we see, and creating what's known as a district improvement financing program, which helps to fund those public infrastructure improvements by taking new development, capturing some of that value and using it to create public infrastructure improvements. And by that, I principally mean Lovett Brook and the traffic improvements. When we get to Lovett Brook, we'd love to daylight it. We'd love to take it out from being underneath the building, remove it from its culvert, and let it act as a stream should act, restoring the ecological habitat there. Creating shared use paths in the area, connecting the businesses, connecting current residents in the area, perhaps future residents in the area. Creating wayfinding signage and making it a nice trail system, basically, not all the way into the wetlands. There's no point in going all the way down to the highway, but something that's a nice network and becomes a real neighborhood amenity. Restoring the wetlands where possible and revegetating the areas that have been impacted by construction in the past. We also would like to do a transportation and traffic improvement plan here. So expanding the intersection at Pearl Street and Oak Street Extension. We heard a lot of comments in the residential survey, particularly some from the employee survey, that people were concerned about existing traffic. And if you put more development in, what does that do to the traffic? So we recognize that should any of this development happen, it's necessary to reconsider what we can do. And that would include a new signal at Lendell Avenue. It would include consolidating driveway entrances, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then adding trees along the sidewalk. We did hear that people didn't find it a comfortable area to walk in. So adding trees along the sidewalk to shade it, to make it more attractive. On the interior of the site, adding more lighting so it feels safer. And then rethinking the bus routes and the connections. It's actually quite well connected by buses, but if we'd like more people to work there, we prefer that they not use cars. So making sure that the bus routes actually work. So I want to show you, thinking about all of that, and that was sort of a back and forth between what we did, developing the scenarios, seeing what they look like, modifying the recommendations, modifying the scenarios. So I'm going to show you what those could look like. So we actually did 3 scenarios. The first scenario, which is what I'm going to show you here, is it's a phase scenario, A, B, and C. We see A as maybe could happen in the next 3 to 5 years. B is maybe 5 to 10, and C is definitely over 10 years, whether that's 15 or 20 or what, or even further out. The market would need some time to catch up. And the way we do the scenario developments, and I'll start with 1A here, 2 and 3, I'm not going to show because those were like, what could fit on the site if you build it out completely? We recognize that it's not realistic in terms of what's there now. So it was a nice test to do those, but it's not appropriate for thinking about at the moment. So if you look at scenario 1A, you see all of the restaurant and retail happening that's there now is staying there. You see the medical offices staying where they are. This single family in the church, Harbor One staying. You've got a couple of new buildings, and the first is a manufacturing here and an office and lab here. So what that does is as people enter into Good Sam from this, it takes the land where the vacant lot is from where the movie theater was, some land that's not part of the wetlands, and kind of builds that out a little bit. Up here, you see a mixed use. And the reason for doing a mixed use in this area is, first of all, to separate residential a little bit from the manufacturing, the lab space. And second, because you already have mixed use up in this area. Now, a scenario plan is not saying this building must be here. It's, we have these different uses. All of these uses could work on the site. It's one way of showing how these uses could work. Actually, we looked at another scenario that had manufacturing up here and had mixed use residential and retail over here. We didn't see that working as well in a phase scenario, so we kind of abandoned that and moved for this. But if you were to come back in 5 years, you might see, or 10 years, you might see buildings on the site that are in different places. So I just wanted to caution that this is an exercise to test how different uses could look. One advantage of doing this is that if you have a mixed use with retail in this corner, you can move some of these retail spaces, the existing spaces, keep them on site and allow this to be continued to be developed for manufacturing. So the next scenario you see is going to test that. So I mentioned 3D. So this is, you're going to see this for each of the scenarios, how this looks in 3D. So again, Good Sam is over here to the side. Here's that office lab that I mentioned is a 3-story. Manufacturing is typically only 1 story. And then what we did was a 3-story building here. I think some of the residential over on the north side of Oak Street actually goes up to 6 stories. But we did the 3 residential and the 1 retail restaurant. Now, again, something like this needs to be responsive to market demand. So it could be higher or it could be shorter, depending on who's going to do that and how much they'd like to build. So in scenario 1B, you see more buildings and you start to see the pathway system that I mentioned earlier. And that's because the additional development in scenario 1B starts to work with that district improvement financing program to start allowing the city to capture the value here and use that for the public improvements. So you see that same manufacturing office lab. Again, this was considered to be a phased scenario. So you build on what you have. We had that mixed use building. This is showing 2 more. It's showing 2 restaurant pads here. There are 3 existing restaurants in this area. So the 2 of those restaurants could fit here and 1 could maybe fit in here. This scenario is leaving the 2 gas stations and also the car wash down here, but it's replacing the mix of businesses here. Again, there's enough space in here to accommodate most, if not all, of the existing uses. And then you're not seeing too much down here in terms of change in buildings at all, but what you are starting to see is that tree network I mentioned. So you see Oak Street Extension, there's starting to be trees all along Oak Street on the south side, a little bit on the north side. You can start to see these paths coming through. Lovett Brook no longer has a building over it when it comes into Oak Street. So you can see the idea of people coming off the sidewalk network. And actually on this side, we're expecting a multi-use path or proposing a multi-use path coming off that and into this network and then connecting to the buildings. So that's kind of the vision that we looked at. And you get to see a little bit of how that would look. Now, this again is a scenario. You're not seeing great architecture here. When we do scenario development, it's just boxes. But again, here was the 2 buildings that we looked at last time. Here's the new manufacturing, new restaurants here. All of these again are 1 stories. And then the multifamily or the mixed use coming in here. And then finally 1C. So if you thought of 1A as being 3 to 5, 1B is 5 to 10, it could be 5 to 15. Scenario 1C would be that 10 plus. And in this case, what you're only real difference you're seeing is another office lab building coming in here, supporting Good Sam and the medical office, because of course we lost a medical office here when we put that residential in. There's a little bit more parking coming in. There's a little bit more trees. We've now gone to the north side of Oak Street. We can put more trees in. Again, that's the district improvement financing program at work, capturing that value. the work that RKG Associates did suggested that that much office lab, having 2 full office lab buildings, is unlikely based on current trends to be something that we see in the near future, but again, could be, as this is changing over time, something that we see in the far future. So, and this, again, is what it looks like. You just see this 3-story office lab building being tucked between the existing office lab or the medical building rather, and Harbor One. So with that, you'll see the existing conditions. The previous slide had the projected demand. I can tell you right now that all of these numbers for 1A, 1B, 1C is more than the demand that RKG Associates projected forward based on current trends. So for any of this to happen, the city would have to market the site. It would have to commit to making those improvements, probably through the redevelopment authority if the city goes forward with an urban renewal plan. And then you would have to successfully market the site, and then those changes would have to be made. That's actually quite a tall ask. So Rob mentioned at the beginning, this is not something that could happen tomorrow. This is, if successful, it's a multi-year project. So just a couple of the project benefits. We talked already about the jobs for Brockton residents and the workforce development. Obviously, with the additional space, it's an increase in the commercial tax base for the city and therefore revenue. I think for a neighborhood perspective, the traffic improvements are critical because we already heard that those were an existing problem, so we don't want to make that worse. Considering new locations for existing businesses, quite a few of them are actually not visible from the street. So giving them better visibility, having people know that they're there, creating parking specifically for them, moving them closer to on-site employees. One of the things we heard from the employee survey was that people don't really walk to those businesses for lunch very often, or afterwards. Creating outdoor dining opportunities near the brook. That was something that obviously was huge in COVID. And those outdoor dining opportunities would be linked to this new recreational area, really focused on walking and maybe biking as well, creating that treat environment, and then improve safety. So one of the other things that we heard from the survey was that people were concerned about safety in the area. They felt the lighting was poor with all that tree coverage and sort of scrubby, background around the wetlands. They just didn't feel safe walking in there. So placing the buildings, probably going to have security cameras on them, lighting, wider sidewalks, and then just introducing more activity helps to provide additional safety. So just to talk a little bit about the traffic, I just want to call this out. Right now, this top section is what you have right now, this top plan, and you see all these black bits. This is where cars can enter and exit sites, because a lot of those driveways are really, really wide. And so and what that means is that there's not an expectation of when people might actually stop to pull onto a site or pull out into traffic having been on a site. So one of the things this plan does is it adds this new signalized intersection. Lindell Avenue, which I showed you as the paper street earlier, is right here. That would actually become a street, as would Newland Avenue, which is another paper street that has never been built. And there would be a signalized intersection there. So for example, all the Harbor One employees would be able to come out or come in at that signalized intersection. Also, by cutting down the number of driveways, we can better control when people are coming on and off. And so that reduces the traffic problems. And then the widening of the intersection would also help. And I just wanted to show the new amenities planned here. So again, you see Lovett Brook right now, there's a building right about there. You can see the brown areas and the hatched areas here. Those are the anticipated plazas. Again, were this to be built, it might look very different, but this is the concept that we'd like to tell people if they're interested in redeveloping these properties. This is what we'd like to see. And then you can see the pathway coming here, a little bit of restored wetlands there. So I mentioned it's an urban renewal, potentially an urban renewal plan. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but although I'm happy to answer questions. Urban renewal plans are very different from the 50s and 60s, where the city would come in with federal funds and just sort of clear out areas, and eventually they'd be built on. Now they do require additional public input, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means for this. They have to meet certain criteria, and it's really about creating conditions to allow the private market to work by making strategic investments. So this, under the legislation, would qualify as a blighted
Take your shirt
open
off.
area, primarily because of the former movie theater site. It's what we call a landlocked site. So you can see it right here. I'm going to call it out in color in a minute. This has also been very interestingly parcelized. I'll show you the history of that. And what I mean is by that is that the land has been kind of chopped up. One of the things to note is that the theater, and you can see it if you look at the report, which is the draft report, which is online, the theater actually predates all of these buildings. So it's really interesting. You see the theater going in, you see all of these buildings coming in. They're really built around the theater, and then the theater is gone. And so you've got this parcel that's got this weird shape and doesn't mean anything anymore. And so that's part of the criteria that we're looking on. You've also got all of again, the paper streets of Lindell Avenue and Newland Avenue. And you've got these chopped up parcels back here that were originally meant to be residential parcels on Newland Avenue, were never developed as such, and are in a combination of different ownerships. And then you can see there's, Good Sam owns most of this, but there's just some interesting parcelization. Here's the theater footprint. You can see how bright that is. And then I'm just calling out the sort of residential parcels that got chopped up because of the history of the site. This lighter yellow actually was originally owned by the same owner as the movie theater, because that was built by them after the movie theater went in. It's now a different ownership. When you go back to how this developed, so this is 1937 and the street patterns. In red are the current street. The red is the original Oak Street. It went much, much further down. That was actually called Broadway. It was clearly sort of merged into Oak Street Extension when Oak Street was cut off. And then these blue lines are paper streets that are sort of, there's remnants of them. Actually, I'll just jump back here. These blocks here, these gray blocks, are actually remnants of those paper streets. So this is obviously pre-24 coming in, and you can see that highway really sort of messed up the arrangement of the streets. This is 1954. Actually, the highway is coming in right about now, but it wasn't updated. This is a Sanborn fire map, which is an insurance map. And again, you can see this grid that got disrupted by the highway going in. So, those will feed into the urban renewal plan portion of it in terms of the criteria as to why it belongs there. So in terms of next steps, there's a planning board meeting on January 5th where they're going to look at this plan. And that's the last step for this part of the planning process. It's saying, okay, we got the land use plan. We understand there's these scenarios and there's these recommendations for actions. The urban renewal plan is the next step, and it has some additional public engagement. So, I ask you to help us spread the word. What we'd like to do, assuming that we can, I know Omicron is kind of messing up our plans, but our original plan was to have an in-person meeting with residents of the area and an in-person meeting with businesses in the area. So that we could show them the concepts, talk about what that means, talk about what the next steps would be in an urban renewal plan, make any modifications that we need to. And that was really to go through sort of February and March, is to develop those components and then take that. If you think of this as the conceptual plan of what we think could happen, the urban renewal plan is the next step to making at least some of this happen. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing, although I'm happy to bring back up anything that you want to see and just open it up for a chat, see what you think, since we haven't had a chance to talk to you before, and answer any questions you have. And if I can't answer them, then I know those are things that we need to look through into the next steps. So happy to chat.
This is Janice.
Emily,
Sorry, we're together. I have Newland Ave behind my house, and we are those houses. We are those houses you're showing that you're going to make into 3 families or 3 stories.
well, potentially.
Yeah, that, I mean, again, these were concepts to test where things could fit. It does not necessarily mean that that will definitely happen. So, but I'm especially interested to hear because you live there now.
Over
What are
40
your
years.
thoughts on this? Sorry, how many?
40.
40, okay, long-term resident.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the area. I mean, obviously you're concerned because you've been living there for 40 years, and I completely understand that. Tell me a little bit about your experience of living there, your experience of the area, what your thoughts are on other parts of the plan, and what your concerns are.
Kim, you want to say anything? No. Well, I'm concerned because, as you know, we were here way before any of these condos and everything else that came in, and they were probably already notified. We never even got notified that this was the real clincher that we think was, I don't know, it just seems like it was shady or something. Going, not knowing that this was going on. Don't they usually send like petitions out or in the mail? No?
Janice, as I was explaining at the beginning of the meeting, we
Yeah.
had an employee who was supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
She did not apparently get all the mailings out. I apologize for that. You should have been notified long before this. We've had other public meetings, and other people have been from the area have been here. So we didn't realize that part of the street had not been notified.
Okay.
So we apologize for that.
Yes.
But
Well, our concern is,
we certainly now know that, we fell down on that, and we're going to make sure that you keep being notified through
we
this
appreciate that.
process.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so there's the paper street behind our house. I own the property out front with where my house exists, and I own abutting to the paper street in behind a parcel of land there too.
So you own front and back.
Yes.
I know exactly where you are. I think you're one of the few who do that.
802.
Actually owns front and back.
802 Oak Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, Tammy's in-laws owned all the property across the street at one time.
Oh,
Oh.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
The Garners.
Okay.
What are you concerned? Also, traffic has gotten exponentially
I,
awful.
Not just the holidays.
It's awful with the way they design the road.
mhm.
They go from two lanes down to one in front of my house, and it's like constant battle of who's going to get in front of the other one.
I think that was the biggest thing we heard actually was traffic in the
Yes.
surveys. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with that too, and what our property is going to be worth. And
Mhm.
of course, if I have to move, I want to be able to go somewhere that I can afford.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure you guys can hear me. I'm not sure. Anyone
Yes,
hear
Scott,
you.
we can.
Yes.
can hear? Okay. My issue is obviously that we're looking at like a multi-million-dollar property or maybe more that you guys are looking at putting in here. I know that my property value is only so much. I just recently moved in. I've redone everything to my house. My daughter goes to school. There's a lot more value here than just what's here.
Mhm.
Correct.
It sounds like we're almost getting close to being pushed out for these corporations that make all this money and all that. And, you know, traffic, that's one issue. That's not really a major issue. That's just how it goes now. But you know, the value of these properties, like Janice was saying, she's been here for 40 years, 30, 40 years, and there's a lot more value here than just market value.
Right.
Oh, I understand you guys can do what you can do, and you know, it gets it kind of gets scary knowing what can happen and how things go. But you know, we look at, like, I'm not sure, maybe I'm speaking for just myself, but okay, you guys go to purchase our properties and you want to get us out of here to make the millions or whatever it is you guys got coming in. Not many of us, you know, Brockton used to be a prideful city. It's not so much anymore. So I don't think you know, you were talking about the river and how everything's going to look and how everything's going to, you know, traffic's going to get better, how it's going to look to people, and you're going to have this river and trees and all that. I don't think that's so much of a concern as to what our property is actually worth to you guys. And I might not be saying that right, but just in my eyes, you know, I've been through a lot of things in the last few years, and I've done a lot to this place where I live that I finally call home. And if somebody wants it, we're not just looking at face value to what the market is. And then you're talking about 10, 15 years down the road, market changes. Like if you guys are looking to buy my property, I want to sell it when it's as high as it is, like it is right now. Not that I want to move. I don't. It's not that. But if I'm going to be pushed out, I want to be pushed out when I can get as much as I can to get out of here.
Well,
you know what you laugh, but you actually.
No, Scott, I understand what you mean. You would want the top dollar for your house, but let me say, I don't mean to interrupt, and I'll let you finish. But you know, these are visions for what could happen if the market is right. And the way that Mayor Sullivan works is that he's not interested in, you know, the city going in and buying these properties. What we're doing is saying, this is a vision, and if a company wants to come in and make a deal with you and you want to sell your property, this is then what we would like that company to do with it. So it's not saying we're going to go and buy everybody's home and push you out. But if somebody did want to buy from you, of course, they have to buy at fair market value, plus, you know, relocation and all the bells and whistles that go along with that. So, you know, and it's possible for this plan to advance with some pieces of the project moving faster than others. So, you know, we're really concerned about the eastern end, western end of I live on Oak Street, and I get mixed up every once in a while too. But you know, down where the old movie theater was, and how do we create the jobs on Good Sam's campus? And you know, the housing is, you know, and mixed use is kind of a you know, further down the stream, because we're really interested in jobs. And so I'll let you, you know, I just wanted to jump in and say that, and then I'll let you finish what you were saying. I'm sorry.
No, I get it. You know, I'm interested in jobs, and I love people to work and earn their money. There's no doubt about that. It's just when it comes down to it, my concern is myself, my family, who works hard and makes a living and does everything they can do to succeed and get by. And I worked really hard to get this property. I've been through a lot of things in the last couple of years, and I got a property that honestly has turned out better than I expected. I was in a different property in a nicer part of town, you know, more quiet, secluded, whatever. Now my kids are older. They have now, more importantly to me, is the access to the highway and everything around. I obviously, I'm not a dummy. I might not be able to verbalize so well, but this is a great location. There's no doubt about it. It's a great location for what you're looking to bring in. And what you're looking to bring in is in my eyes well over market value. Like, I'm not looking, you know, I understand if somebody is looking to buy these properties, and like Janice said, she's been here forever, and maybe it means more to her than it does myself. I've only been here a couple of years, but I've done a ton of work. I was looking to camp out and be here. And I honest to God knew this was coming. I actually expressed this to family members. Eventually someone's going to come and try to buy this property because there's a lot of value in it. I'm concerned that when it comes down to it, when the people with all this money and all the, you know, the value in it and everything, I'm not leaving unless it's right for me. And I don't think my neighbors are either. They've got years here. They've got the access to the highway and everything that is actually valuable to people in our position that don't have the younger kids that need a neighborhood and all that. So I'm not sitting here saying I'm opposed to selling my property. I'm definitely willing. It's just, I don't want, I know these companies, you guys, millions of dollars and all this are going to make a fortune down the road. And you look at us as the small people, and yeah, we are, but it's just going to be worth our while to relocate and do everything that's down the road for us. I might not be verbalizing that right.
No, that makes
you're
perfect
making
sense.
sense, Scott.
Yeah. That makes
What you're saying,
absolutely
Scott,
sense.
is you want you don't want just the corporations to make the money. You want us to be able to profit by this.
Yeah, I understand that you're going to make a huge profit, and that's okay. That's how everything works. I get that. Just the part of it that I'm looking at, just myself, and I'm not even speaking for my neighbors because their situation's different. Just my personal, my personal situation is, for me to relocate is way more than profit value, like than the land and everything that's here. Like my house, it's a box. It's not a whole lot, but for 3 years, I've spent almost every day refurbishing a kitchen, bathroom. I added a basement. I added a bathroom. I did all this work to make this a livable house for me and my 3 children that I have alone. And I'm not ready to sell my house for market value. Like it's worth a whole lot more to me than market value. You understand? And not to mention, I don't even know if I want to say this, but I work in the city. I can't even leave for another year. So I got 6 years in the city.
6 years in.
6 years in, and I'm happy. And don't get me wrong, my plans were eventually to move and get out of the city. But if that wasn't in the cards, it wasn't. Mm-hmm. If this is my ticket out, then I'm okay with that. But it's got to be right. It's got to be right. And I know my neighbor next door has been there a lot longer. So there's a lot more sentimental value and everything for her. So
Understood. So when it does become right for you, then this is kind of what we would like to see happen. And
I'm
moving my hands and I realize that that's not showing up on camera. So,
So Scott, just to say, first of all, neither Rob nor I are developers. So Rob is obviously the city employee director. I'm an urban planner. So, you know, I help cities develop these concepts, but I'm not a developer. So, you know, just to make that clear. What I'm hearing you say is that you are, you know, you have sweat equity invested in your house.
Exactly.
You have emotions invested in your house. Janice and Tammy, you're long-term residents. You have your own emotions invested in your house. Absolutely understood. Again, you know, the scenarios are to show what could happen. Again, we don't see the market moving that quickly. Now, with a plan out there, you might get approached by somebody saying, hey, I see the city has a plan. I want, you know, I've been thinking about this area for a while. I'd like to buy your land. And then that's up to you, right? You can
Right.
say
Yeah, no,
yes or no. Yeah.
I've been getting approached almost every week. I get something in the mail. We want to buy a
wow.
we want to buy a property. We want to buy a property. And the thing is I'm not interested in selling my property unless it's for something that is feasible. Like, you know, it's
Yeah.
feasible for me to relocate and be able to, you know, like I've owned 5 or 6 properties now, and since day one, I've bought a property, refurbished it, bought another one, refurbished it, and just kept going that way. I don't want to refurbish anymore. If I'm gonna leave again, I need the value enough. I need the money to be right where the
Right,
next place I
right.
move, I don't have to refurbish anymore.
So, yeah, so let me ask you all a question. Let's just, well, we're going to do some scenario thinking while we're all together. You all stay in your houses. You know, somebody hasn't made the offer that would persuade you that you want to move. You're happy where you are. You like the area. You have concerns about the traffic. But, you know, as Rob said, we're looking at the west side for probably the first thing that happens. You know, if that comes in, if maybe there's some improvements to the traffic, if there's maybe some improvements to the site, it gets greened up a little bit more. I mean, are there things that if you stayed, you would like to see? Were there any of those the components of the plan that you liked, or really it's you know, or that you didn't like for that matter, other than obviously your own properties? I'm curious what you think on that.
I don't want to keep butting in and interrupting. I'm sorry if Janice or Tammy have anything. One of my best friends, I don't know if you're probably not even familiar with it, but the Brockton Hospital just bought up all the property around one of my friend's houses, the LeBlanc family. They bought up all the properties around the whole property. And this one particular friend of mine still has a house. There's all these hospital buildings around this property.
On the east side. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yep.
Interesting.
The LeBlanc, yes, they would not sell. And they're the only house in the neighborhood, but they're still happy as can be. I would
Yeah.
not be that family, but if I have to
I don't
be, I
want to
will.
be that family, but
Okay.
I won't be
But
that.
it is
family.
possible to do a large portion of this plan without even touching your houses.
Right. I understand that. And that's not, I'm not saying that's what I want, because obviously I don't want a bunch of buildings around my house.
Right.
But on the other side of it, like, I'm ready to go. I would go, but it just has to be right.
It has to be a right deal.
Yeah, it
It
would
hap-
have to look nice. Yeah.
So I'm actually going to throw something back up, one of the maps. I was scrolling to it, just one of these back up. So this is 1B. You know, 1A, we had the 2 buildings coming in. We had that first mixed use. So pretend this doesn't happen. Pretend these 3 don't happen. And then let's just assume when we talked about this among my team, I said, I want you to make sure that you pay attention to the parcel lines. So not to make you dizzy, but let me just jump down. So you see the parcel lines of all the residential here. That and you know, your houses in here, that
That's the very
restaurant.
last house next to that parking lot where you are.
Oh, right here. This is
Yeah,
you,
that's
Scott?
Scott.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
I can't see it for some reason. I don't know why, but
Mine's right next to his.
Okay, yours is right next to his. That's right, I remember that. And
Although
Tammy,
it's
where are
blue
you?
in real life.
I'm the longhouse.
You're the longhouse, okay. Oh, so you actually got a double lot.
I
For
have a
the-
double
with-
parcel.
Okay, and you've got the front, back to front parcel. Okay, great. So just keep in mind where those lines are. So when my colleagues and I were working on how do we develop the scenarios, what do they look like? I asked them to make sure that the multifamily sort of started in here and respected the parcel lines. What that means is that when you look at scenario B here, the mixed use, these could go away and everything from here, sorry, that's 1C, these could go away, those houses could stay, and everything from here over could be built. Now, the difference is that means that the retail here doesn't get moved on site. So, they would either be relocated somewhere else, or maybe these restaurant buildings get rethought and it's a combination of retail and restaurant. But to Rob's point, this stuff, certainly these two buildings and possibly these two, depending on discussions, could happen without touching your houses. So, just so you know that it's possible to do at least some of this.
I
yeah.
don't think it's any different than having
I'm
those.
sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. That's I don't want to sound like a jerk, but that's kind of a threat. Like, okay, we're gonna build these 3 families around your
Oh,
house.
I'm
You're
sorry.
gonna-
I did not mean to make it sound like a threat. What I
I know.
meant is that this would remain. Hang on, let me go back to that would just stay as is.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be a threat. It was actually meant to be a help. So,
No, I just sounds. I don't.
okay, yeah, no, it was not meant to
I
be
could take
threatening
things.
at all.
I could absolutely take things out of context.
These are
like-
down near the
it's-
movie theater, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so hang on, let me put
So
it
it's
back
not
up.
really near our houses.
Right.
Okay.
So this is near the movie theater, this brown, that is right where the movie theater was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That's the
that's
strip
North
plaza
Coast.
where Chinatown is.
It's a
Yeah,
mess down there now anyway, so it'll be an improvement.
yeah, so the Chinatown restaurant is here, Frank's is here, that's the car wash, that's the mobile there. And the original Tommy Doyle's is here, that's the 7-Eleven and the laundromat. So that restaurant building that we were showing there is roughly where this purple building that is. It's the 1984 medical office.
Yeah.
I don't. I can't see anything. Does anyone know a button on this phone I can press? All I can see is a button that says "Don't speak" and "Done speaking."
Oh,
I'd like to see what you're showing because I don't want to sound like a jerk.
You're on the phone.
that explains why you couldn't see what I was talking about.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can't see it, so
Do you have
I'm
a
sitting here and I'm
computer,
thinking
Scott?
one thing.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm on the 3rd floor of City Hall, right across the hall from Pat Hill.
Okay,
If you want to come in, I can walk through this with you.
I can do that. Tomorrow might sound all right. Tomorrow I got a light day. I got to finish my thing in the morning and then I can come in and see that. I'd like to see it. Because I don't want to sound like a jerk saying you guys are threatening and this and that. It just, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like throwing up a bunch of 3 families around us. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that just doesn't sound good to me, but I can't see it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
No, what I was saying is that we would completely take away the mixed use. So what I do is, when we
Hang
get
on
to the
just a
planning
second.
board.
So Scott,
Okay.
Yeah.
if you could come by at either 9:30 or at noon.
Noontime's good. That's
Noon would be good. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
I can come by at noon tomorrow.
Perfect.
3rd floor up at Pat, where Larry used to be.
Yeah, right across, next to the building department.
Okay,
Yeah, so
that
Scott,
sounds good. I'd
Rob
like
will-
to see it.
Yeah,
All right,
Rob
thank
will show you tomorrow, but what I was talking about was actually not putting the mixed use there at all. So, that would be which means that there are other things that could happen, but they wouldn't touch your house and they wouldn't be immediately next to your house either.
All right. No, I apologize. I didn't want
Yeah.
to sound like
No,
that.
no,
but
no. It's hard to visualize this without seeing it.
It
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
is. It really is. Like,
Yeah.
so are you talking about going down towards Walmart?
It's gonna be down there. That's what they said.
Yeah, I think going west on Oak Street to where it connects with North Pearl Street, right where
Oh.
all the businesses are. That's the
So
area.
most of our activity is from Reservoir
Yes.
west.
Okay.
And
All right.
there's-
So away
There's
from Walmart, the other
options
way.
for Reservoir East, but that's where you guys live, but that is gonna depend on, you doing a deal with a developer, not us
Right.
doing the deal.
Right.
Okay. All right. No, I get it. I get it. It's two separate things. Okay. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
All right. I really didn't mean to sound like a jerk. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're
Don't worry
fine.
about it. So, no, not at all. I just wanted to make sure that you understood that this is a discussion. This is not a threat. And I am delighted that we're able to talk to you before we go to the planning board, because that,
Thank you.
allows us to tell the planning board, look, this is what we've been working on, but we've been hearing different things since then. So,
And Janice and Tammy, you've been able to see this, correct?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, good,
Yes.
good.
excellent.
You can come by for lunch tomorrow too.
I can't.
I can't.
I'm working.
It's brown bag, so bring your own.
So Janice and Tammy, any thoughts on anything else you want to talk
I have
about?
to work tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah,
No, I'm good. I saw all the blueprints and everything, and I do understand them because I am in construction.
okay.
Tammy did show me, yeah.
And I showed Jan them. But I turned on.
So
So
again,
then, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, Tammy. You didn't show me anything. I'm sorry. No, I'm your next door neighbor. I'm Scott. I'm wicked antisocial. I'm wicked antisocial. I'm very sorry.
okay, so Scott, I will see you tomorrow.
Yes, I'll pop up.
Okay,
Tammy and Janice, if you have other questions,
sure.
we're gonna be
I can
going
email
and
you
making
too,
another
right?
presentation to the planning board in January.
Yes, I'll be on that, yeah.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you think of any other questions, please reach out to us.
Okay.
And again, I apologize that you weren't contacted.
yeah. It was unsettling.
Yeah.
I
but
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
Someone said to me, you might be interested in this.
So
Yes,
with
and-
that,
and-
I want to thank you both, or all three of you, for
Yeah.
joining us this evening, and look forward to continuing this conversation.
And
Okay,
Right.
sounds good.
I also want to thank you, but have you all seen the website?
I have, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, great, good. I just wanted to make sure you had that. Fantastic. Yes, thank you very much. I'm really pleased that the three of you are able to join us tonight on relatively short notice. So,
I'm
this
glad
is
Janice
really-
contacted us, because we had no idea that your side of the street didn't get noticed.
I'm very glad Janice invited me because
Yeah.
I
it was,
I was a little taken back that, Isabel Lottie knew all about it when I got on one of the, Zoom meetings. I didn't have a clue, and they were notified and I wasn't.
That was Tammy,
Yeah.
I think, in the background. Well, thank you very much.
okay, thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays,
You too.
You too.
Yes,
and
happy
we'll talk to you
holidays.
soon.
Okay, see you in January. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.